Hello friend, welcome back. In our previous video, we have created one of the form with using that HTML tag, right? So now in this video, I want to discuss about they have also one of the building form in Django. So how can use this building form, and with this building form, how much easily you can create this type of form. In this video, I will show you that things with the live example. For doing this, first of all, we have to create one of the form file. So in our application, that is our first application, right? So into this first application, I want to create one of the new file. So I just click as a new file, and here I just name it as a forms. Okay, I just name it as a forms.py. So I have created one of the file as a forms.py. Now click as a enter. So now you can see there is a our forms.py file. So now here, first of all, we have to input our Django building forms, right? So here I have to do that work. So I just simply define as a form and into the Django. So I just simply define as a form Django, and I want to import one of the function as a form. Okay, so I just simply define as a forms in particular that position. So as I told you, that is one of the form. So that is actually the building form into the Django. For the reasons here, I define as a form Django, just input this form. And after that, if you want to define some of the form, you have to defining it with a specific some of the class. That we actually did for our models. If you go to that models, I have created two models as a musician and the album. So here I define every field, that means our every database table as with this class, right? And after that, we define some of the variable. So it should be just like that same. Here we have to do the same things for every form. You have to define one of the class. So I just simply define one of the class. Okay, I just simply define the class and I just name it as a user and the form. Okay, I just simply define as a user form, and here first of all we have to define with our these forms, and here we have to define our form class. So I just simply define our forms. Okay, so I just simply define our form class in particular that position. Perfect. And after that, also here I have defined some of the field, right? So I have defined some of the field, input field as a username, and also I define another field as a user email. So for every field, you have to define that things in particular that area with the variable. So for the every field, you have to define it. So better I want to take one of the variable. So I just take one of the variable as a user and the name. Okay, I just name it as a username, and then with this form, right? With these forms, I have defined one of the type. I think you already know about it. So here I define one of the character field type. So I just simply define one of the character field type. And also I want to take another one for our user email. So this type of one of the form I want to use. So for this one, I just name it as user underscore email. Okay, and then I just simply define as with these forms. That means with our form class, and here I want to define the type, and for the email I want to define as another type as email type. So I just simply define as email field. Okay friends, so I just simply define two of these on here. So now if you want to compare it with our HTML code, like here, if you copy it, I just simply copy it, and now in particular that position, I just simply defining it. Okay, and I just put that things as a hide. I just put that things as a note in particular that area. Now here, first of all, that is our input type. Input type I have defined in our HTML as a text. And also into the forms, that means that is actually, I told you, that is one of the Django input, one of the building forms. So into the form, I define that character type. That means that character type will be as a text, right? And also after that, I define as a name. So this name is actually means this one. Here I define that things with one of the variables. So that is a variable name as a username. Okay friend, so I just simply define two of these in particular that area, and also by default it will be as a required. So they have also different type of attributes. So step by step I will also show you how can add different type of attribute into this Django form. So in Django form, everything is already built, so you have to just call it. So now we have to add our this form. That means before I have added our this form in our view, right? So into the view, I have already created one of the function, that is our form function. So in particular that position we have to defining it. So we have to defining it, that is our form. So we have to first of all define that part. So if you want to defining it, first of all we have to load our which things. First of all, we have to load our into the fast tab. Into the fast tab, I have defined this form, right? So now first of all, we have to load it. So if you want to load it after this, okay, after this I just simply define as a form, from our which position, from our fast tab. So I just simply define as a fast, okay, from our fast tab. And after that fast tab, I want to input it. So I want to input our form, okay, and we want to input our, that means in our fast tab I want to input our these forms. So that is actually our forms, okay friend. And also we have to create one of the object. So we have to create one of the objects. So here I defined that our class name as a user form. So we have to create one of the object for our this class. So in particular that position, that means in our this function area, okay. After this, here I define one of the name. I just take one of the variable as a new underscore form. And now I want to create one of the objects. So our object, so here I have to define our forms, that means our these forms, okay. Into the forms area, I have already created one of the class. So here I have already created our class name as a user form, right? So I just simply copy it, and now here after this form I just simply define our this user form class. So I just simply define our this class name. Okay friend, I hope it's very much clear to you. So now we have to do, I have already get all that our to field data. So that is our to field data. I have defining it with this object, and I just take the things with this variable. So now I want to pass it. Because of all, we have to actually display it in our this page, right? We have to display it in our form.html page. That means that is our form.html page. So here if you want to pass it, then here I want to define one of the ID first. So I just name that ID as a test, okay. I just name it as a test form. So I just name it as a test form, and here I want to pass our our variable. That means here I have already defined all the things, that is our form, and I just take the things with this variable, and now I just simply pass it in particular that area, okay. So I just simply pass it in our diction, and also I context it in our diction area. So here I get all the things in our dictionary. That means in our diction, into this diction I have already passed our this diction with this context. So that is our diction. So now we can actually use our this form in our this fast tab and in our form HTML page, right friend? I hope it's very much clear to you. So here I just pass all the data in our form HTML page. So now we have to work in our form HTML page. So now go to our fast tab, into the fast tab, that is our form HTML. So that is our HTML form. So better I want to because here I also want to display our Django form in particular same page. So better I want to change that name. So this is created, okay, created by HTML code. So I just name it as a created by HTML code. And after this here I take one of the HR tag. So with this HR tag it should be actually created some of the line, okay. And after this here I want to define another h3 tag. I define another h3 tag, define that h3 tag, and here I have to define that form. So I just simply define that form on here. So that is our class. We don't need this class. I just simply remove it. And then also index HTML. So here I just make the things as a blank, and method will be as a post. So in particular that area, so here I want to display our file name. So here I have already defined our form. So into this form I have take the things with this variable, that means this ID as a text form. I just simply copy it, and now here I just simply paste it. That means here our form will be loaded. That means our Django form will be loaded, right friend? I think it should be very much clear to you, because here I already define our this form, and I take that things with this variable, and into the diction here I define that ID. Into this ID I pass our this form, that means the new form. And also here if you want to display our h3, like here I also want to display some of the ID. So I have already discussed about that things with you. If you want to pass some of the text, how can do that work? Like here simple things, I take one of the ID as a headline 1 or heading 1. I just name it as a heading underscore 1, and in particular that position I want to define some of the text as a this is, okay, this is from using Django library, okay. I just name it as a Django library. So I take that our ID. So our ID is this one as a heading one. So I just simply copy it and now go to our HTML one. That means HTML, that means form HTML, in particular that position. Here I want to display it. So I just simply display it. Okay friend, I hope it's very much clear to you. So now let's check this out. If you now click as a save all, first of all I want to check it. Yeah, everything is right. Now go our form page. So that is our URL as a form. Click as a refresh. Yes, now you can see friend, now I hope it should be very much clear to you. So that is our HTML code. So that with this HTML code I have created one of the form, and that is our Django library form. How much easy it is, you can see without creating any field we actually define our two of this field. One will be as a username, another will be as a user email. So that is our email field, that is our user field, right? And also here I define our text. So now it should be very much clear to you what exactly the things I did on here. So into the form, here I define two of this object, one object name as a username. So by default actually is getting this name. That means by default it's actually getting this name. So here you can see that exactly name is the user and the name and the user email. So that is our variable, this variable all that name. So here you automatically is get it, and after that here I define one of the class as a user form class. Into the user form class I have defined two of this object, and into this view, into this view area I simply define one of the variable as a new form, and here I have created one of the object, right? So I have created one of the object. First of all I load our form page. That means into the form page I import it, and into this form, with this form I want to access our this form page. So into this form page I have created one of the class, so our class name, so that is our user form class. So I just simply define our user form class, right? And then into the dictionary I just simply pass it with this ID as a text form ID, and here I pass our new form. So that means here I just simply pass it. So after that also I take another ID as a headline one, and into this headline one here I define some of the string data, and here I take the things with this diction. So we have to pass it in our form HTML. For the reasons with this context I pass our this diction. So now we can actually access our this text form ID and the head ID in our form HTML. So into this form HTML I just simply display the h3 tag as a headline one, and our action form area I just simply define as a text form, right? So now you can see it's now perfectly getting our this form in our form page. So in our next video we'll do more things into this form area. How can do that work? I will show you that things with a live example. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.